What is up there, Workforce? Chris here with WorkToGame, and it's time to get more advanced with macros. So we've been building this slowly, and we've been starting really simple, but it's time to start increasing quality of life with really not too much more complexity. So we're just building where we left off. Now, there are plenty of websites. If you just go out there, Reddit's really great at this. Going out there, and if there's something specific you want to do, there are hundreds of different macro things you can use. But let's talk about, I don't know, just like a simple quality of life thing we can do. So if I open up my inventory, sorting inventory with macros, that's what we're talking about here. So if I go to my inventory, and let's just say for a second, let's just get some stuff out of order here. We'll maybe move that right there, and then we'll move this way over here, right? So that's all gotten sloppy over time. You've been out gathering, you've been running dungeons and all of that. And then meanwhile, actually, as you've been kind of leveling, you're not sure if this is kind of your best gear, and you're not sure if maybe there's that extra tank helm that you can finally convert into materia or desynthesize or whatever it is you want to do with old gear. And so let's kind of just jumble things up here and grab some things, push them down to the bottom. Okay. So as I change classes, so as I change to White Mage, and then we change to Pugilist, you'll see nothing really happens to my inventory because I've set this macro specifically on Paladin to show exactly how this works. Now, when I click to my Paladin here, it's actually going to sort both of these inventories. So first, you're going to see my Armoury sort, then you're going to see my inventory sort. There's a slight delay there. The reason for that is because of the way I change classes. Sometimes I'm changing classes very quickly, and so I prefer to have it kind of give it a second so that it can kind of clean itself up one last time, because otherwise what happens is one of the items from a previous class, like my Dark Knight here, is still way off. And so then when I switch to Paladin, if I give it a second, that can actually kind of clean that up. And so it waits half a second. And so let's go see what is powering all of this. So we go into user macros. This is once again going to be under shared because I have multiple characters and I want to have these across all my characters. And it's actually extended on the previous guide where we talked about making individual class switching to swap your HUD. So the reason I swapped individual things is because I wanted to have the ability to go in and start individually choosing which classes did which things, even though this is still something that I'd kind of want on everybody. And so what I've done here is I've actually changed a couple of things that I've also changed glamour. And so when we switch to my Pugilist here, I don't actually really like that eye patch, right? The eye patch just doesn't do much for me. So we can actually go over to here, and we should be able to get that to display off. Display head off. Okay, we're back. I just troubleshot one more thing. I do have to have a wait command in here, or sometimes when I'm changing classes, it doesn't seem to register because I'm doing a HUD layout change. And so just to show how this works, when we go to my Paladin, you see that it takes just a second, but my headpiece actually comes on. And so what's actually happening is after my HUD change, this sometimes doesn't seem to work, so I'm going to put a delay in here. You may not need it. And so when I swap to my Pugilist has an eye patch. I don't like the eye patch, so I'd rather it be off. And so I can say /display head on, /display head off. If you don't do on and off, it's a toggle. And the problem with a toggle is that if I ever were to start using that macro repeatedly in my tanks, then some of my tanks might be turning this head on and off and on and off. And I don't want it that way. I want to set it. And so by putting on afterwards, it toggles it. Then I'm going to wait half a second just to be sure that the server's kind of caught up. And I'm going to say sort my inventory. And the inventory I want you to sort is I have to first tell you how I want you to sort it. So I'm going to say condition, right? So the conditions that we want met. And you can have multiple. There are people who have crazy things. And what I'm going to say is I want you to sort my armory. That's the portion of my inventory I want you to set. And I want you to sort it by eye level and then DES for descending. So I want you to sort it from the highest eye level to the lowest eye level, because I find that that's how I use my armory chest. So it's about how do you use your armory chest. So if I go ahead and open up here, the way I always use it is when I'm on a class, I typically am looking at just the highest thing that's not grayed out. And so I really prefer to see, hey, is there anything else in here that's not grayed out that's sitting as high as possible? And so that's how I use my armory chest. And I can see that there's some low-level things I can equip, and then I can just go along the highs here. I see that I still have a 360 helm. I could easily strip that materia out and go ahead and convert that down to materia itself. And so that's a good way for me to tell that I have extra junk in my inventory right now. And so the next thing I want to do is /execute. So now that we've said one or more conditions, I'm ready for you to go ahead and do it. And I want you to do it to my armory. So execute the sort on my armory. So I sort, do it in the armory. Then I want you to wait half a second. If you don't do this, it won't necessarily sort your inventory because it's kind of in the middle of sorting your armory. And I'm going to do the same thing. I sort, inventory sort, condition inventory. This time I want you to sort by category ascending, because if I do eye level, it does some weird things. And so I like it to do by category so that all my baits are together, all my gear is at the beginning, and then I prefer ascending because I just find that the categories are organized really nicely for me. It puts gear first and then potions, and then we get into all the different gathering things, and we end with like my scrolls, MGP cards, and so that's my preference. But there's lots of conditions by which you can sort these. And then I'm going to do the same thing, inventory sort, execute, now this time on my inventory. And then this last one I added for myself, so when I don't have my camera up and the chat being beneath me, it actually shows Paladin reporting for duty. And so let me just go ahead and remove my face. Poof. All right. So now that my face is gone, you'll see Paladin reporting for duty. And so what that allows me to do is if I jump over to my white mage so that I know the macro worked, I can go ahead and do this. It'll say you changed to Paladin. It'll go through everything half a second, and then Paladin reporting for duty. And so I can very easily go in here and I can actually kind of say copy all of this. And then I know that my warrior, I want to be the exact same. So I can say paste. And this time I can change this to warrior, right? And so now when I switch to warrior, it'll take a second, it'll sort everything, just one more time, warrior reporting for duty. Now if you click through these really fast, then you know the macro kind of gets interrupted and it'll say warrior reporting for duty because I did it too fast for the Paladin to recognize. So you can see I went right through Paladin and then right to warrior. That's the only one reporting for duty. And so that's what tells me that it had a chance to complete everything in between. But as we run out of lines, you may have to cut things like that. You may have to try to trim down how many of these weights are. See if any of these weights can be removed without breaking the macro. Because the reason I put the weights in is because sometimes as I'm clicking through these things really fast, it gets off, at which time you actually end up kind of losing the whole macro. And you lose everything from the point at where that happened down. And so you may not have an inventory sorted, and you may have to go back to right-clicking an item in your inventory and going to sort. And I know that's really awful. Same with your thing over here. You may have to actually sort that from time to time. And so you can see that it still kind of changes it. It's sorting it based on a different condition. I'm having it support purely from eye level down because that's how I actually prefer it. This actually sorts sometimes a little bit differently. So like these are both 360, 360, so no difference there, 310, 290, 285. But you can see it actually changed a couple of items. So if I go to Paladin, give it a second. There we go. You see things kind of move around a little bit, but it's close enough for me. And once again, you can set multiple conditions. You could also not nest these inside your character change macro. You could nest these inside a sort button that you just want to press from time to time. You could go ahead and nest this in like your mount macro, so it sorts your inventory every time you mount. I would not nest it with any battle abilities because in battle you're pressing things really fast, and a lot of times you're adding lag to the system by doing this. So it's telling the server multiple multiple commands. So I wouldn't do it to anything that's going to affect battle. And so I would prefer to put it behind things like consumables that you never do in battle, mounting and then changing classes. So those are kind of the areas that I would nest something like this. But this starts to show you a little bit more advanced macros. This starts to show you that, hey, now we're starting to get into where I can actually start to have these huge quality of life things where after a couple months you don't even remember it does this, and then you watch somebody else play, you're over at a friend's house or whatever, and you're like, your inventory's all jacked. It's like, yeah, I never remember to sort it. And it's like, oh, mine just does that for me. And so macros is something incredibly powerful that you can build in quality of life changes that maybe are just things that bug you. So my name is Chris with WorkToGame. If you have any other questions, any other ideas for things you'd like a macro to do or things that you know a macro can do, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
We really appreciate you watching. We really, really, really do. Really appreciate you watching. We really, really do. A 30-second end screen is so long. I don't know how to fill all this time.